And unlike it wasn't a metal seal. It wasn't like a puncture, like you hook a hose up to it. It was something that was meant to be cracked. So I was looking at it. Of course, all the instructions are burned off. There's just there's one, when I rolled it, there's one area that was face down that didn't get burned, and the lettering was still on there. It was olive drab, so, it's military again. Since it was military, I knew it had value, so I stood the barrel up, scraped off an area, There's a pin on the side to deploy it. And when I stood the barrel up, the olive drab, there's some lettering there. C4R-C.A.S. Bright yellow stenciling. But of course, no explanation of what that was because everything else was burned. So I thought maybe it was some kind of explosive or something, If so, great. I mean, that's valuable if you can find it. So there's a rapid deployment lever on the top of the barrel. I had no idea what it was, but it was meant for people to deploy. I mean, it wasn't a bomb, so I pulled the lever, What does this lever do? Click. Well, I pulled it, and off comes the lid, no problem. I look inside, and it looks like a plastic bag, but it's got this, another handle in the middle of the plastic bag, and the plastic bag is attached to the insides of the barrel, like another lid. You know what I mean? And it just, again, had a big lettering, on it to activate C4R-C.A.S. Pull lever, stand back. And I stood there for a long time trying to figure out what was going on. It was just a clear fluid in a bag. I had no idea what it was. I looked at it. It didn't look like a bomb. I had no idea what this thing was. And there's no way I can carry it, right? So what do you do? So, like an idiot, I pull it. I pull on this handle, and all it was it was like a tearing mechanism that ripped the fluid in the bag and allowed it to dump on what was ever underneath it. So it was like a combined mixture thing. I thought it was some kind of, maybe it was a decontamination thing or something. I had no idea. But I pulled it, and the minute I did, there's this steam, started coming out of the barrel. So I stand back, I'm way back now. I'm see cover now, and I'm looking at my vent LED, and I'm waiting for the toxin light to go off, and nothing happened, I'm just straining, you can hear the hiss and the echo of it. And after I waited a while, I was going to get up and come closer, and I heard this sound. I will never forget that sound. It sounded like this baby's cry mixed with a howl. It was just this twisted noise, rending flesh. It was an unreal sound. And the barrel moved and knocked over on its side. Well, that was it for me. I'm out of there. I turned tail and I started to haul. But the thing is, when you're scared, you got to be careful, especially when you're running in a burned out building. You wind up hooking yourself on some rebar, getting injured. So I started to run. The shadows were there. The wind had picked up. But it was a dark day. The minute I got outside, I took to the streets. I was expecting, I didn't know what to see. If there'd have been a zombie out there, I would have been happy. If there's nothing, I just started to go. Hauling down this street, with the dust. I was breathing hard. So I'm glad that vent light wasn't going off, because if there'd been anything toxic in that air, man, was I hauling. I got maybe 200-300 feet away, and then I heard it echoing through the silence. I heard the sound of that barrel being moved, and then the most unreal sound of something big moving very, very fast. I mean very fast. It sounded unmistakable sound of nails hitting concrete. Whatever it was that was inside that barrel got alive and was coming after me. And it was moving. It was flanking me. It was moving off to an angle I couldn't see it, and I wasn't trying hard to look, so I ducked down an alley. I don't know the city. I get down to the end of the alleyway, I was breathing hard, straining to hear, and I could hear the sounds of those nails, shifting. So I stopped. Pulled my blade and got ready to deal with whatever might come down the alley. I could go back out the front, but, if I didn't know I ducked down here, then I would have just given away my position, right? So I hunkered down, dropped my bag, and got ready to get it on. I don't know what was going to come down that alleyway, but whatever it was going to get some. And that was until it came into the alleyway, and then I thought, well, this is how I die. The first time I ever saw any animal that size. It was a dog, sort of. Massive thing. Not so much tall, just wide, stocky. Maybe it was only about 3 feet to the shoulder, but it looked like 2 feet thick. It's like just this huge gaping mouth. I can't remember what kind of dog I'd ever seen that looked like that, but it was just muscle, mutated, with this thick, coarse hair, short, but it was coarse. And it starts coming down the alleyway, looking at me. And I can see that one of its eyes has been augmented somehow, and it's hooking into, he's got streamlined tubing that's going down into his neck and that, it's obviously some kind of a combat unit. I'd heard of them, Borg dogs or whatever. See, during the times of the war, robots were expensive. And since, animals had no rights, they started doing augmentation testing, where they took animals and instead of making a robot from scratch, they'd use one of nature's creatures and then turn it into a combat creature. So they started breeding these dogs. Canine Assault System. That's when I figured out what it was. The C4R was a designation of the type, and CAS was a Canine Assault System. So I'm like, great. They stopped using them because, the cost was high. And I couldn't even tell you why they stopped. This thing was some kind of a terror in front of me. Looked right at me. And then we must have stood there for about a lifetime. Me looking at this robot monstrous dog. Its hair looked like needles. And him looking at me. So I said the only thing I could think to say, which at the time was, good dog. And he started to wag his tail. And that's when I started to put it together. I didn't know it. I confirmed it later, but see, when I activated it, whatever, activates one of these dogs. When I say activate, see, what they do is they would take these dogs, they genetically breed them, they augment them. I found out later, some research on it, but they'd breed the dogs, and then they'd augment them with biometrics and cybernetics and whatever to enhance the dog's capabilities. Dogs only live about 4 years anyway, but on the battlefield they have a lifespan of about, 35-40 minutes, depending on combat scenarios. But whoever activates the dog, what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to stick your head over top of the barrel, you see, and the first person that the dog sees becomes identified with master. See, they take the dogs and they freeze dry them or something. I don't know what they do. They genetically treat them so the dog's in stasis inside these barrels. Because if the dog only lives 4 years, you got to ship it, and you don't need to feed it. So you put it in this weird stasis system. you rip this bag falls on it, breaks the dog out of stasis, I guess, or whatever. I don't know the chemistry behind it. It was all top secret. And the dog's activated, you know, I mean, the thing's almost more machine than animal. The first person it sees it calls master, and that's it. Everything after that is all pre-programmed. I mean, all the SID commands, attack, kill, all that good stuff.